On March the 25th, 2022, I released the first episode of Life, Health, and the Universe. So that's almost over 3 years. And I was joined by a very special guest, Patty Sage. If you haven't listened to that episode, you can easily find it on my website by searching for Patty, and you'll find the episode there along with the second episode that we recorded on the 7th of June 2024, or that was released on that date. So Patty is joining me again today. I feel very fortunate to have you here. We had a little false start because I was jabbering my words, and you've brought us into the space beautifully. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's kind of always a bit special, isn't it?
Hello, dear friend. It is very special. Thank you for having me back.
And things have
Uh,
changed. Things have changed, evolved. Like we're still the same, but we're, 3.5 years on. Um, I always refer to you as a spiritual badass, or, in my English accent, badass,
oh,
badass, badass.
or
But you're, how do we pronounce it? Usui? Reiki
Usui.
master, Usui, Reiki master. You're a life coach, you're an intuitive healer, and you're a cellist. So you've had a whole bunch of stuff going on. If the listeners do go back and listen to that first episode, we were, well, we still are parenting, but we were talking about CrossFit, parenting, and all of the things that life's challenges were kind of bringing us at that point in time. And it's really interesting to see how much growth and evolution there's been within that 3.5 years.
hmm Yeah, we were sprouting. Um, we had just planted new seeds. I don't even think they had come to fruition yet. With the experience we had under our belts, um, and challenges and life stages, with the intention to bring our fullness and expansive and expression to this world, and taking a chance on it. And you're right, it's 3.5 years now. Here we are, tons has happened between the both of us. And yet I feel like it was yesterday. So
Yeah,
it's nice to catch up. I love that we get to catch up with each other.
yeah,
So good
same.
to see you.
It's
Hmm.
really interesting because whatever stage of life we're in, and when I go back to that 3.5 years time, I really feel like I was at a turning point in my life, but I still feel like I'm at that turning point and things have changed and evolved, but it doesn't feel like I have yet arrived, which is kind of interesting. And maybe it's just me being impatient, or actually, I've drawn a couple of angel cards in the last couple of days, and the message is clearly just take stock of where you are right now.
Hmm.
Rather, and I think that, I don't know, there's that always that there's a pull of there's more, there's more, there's more, but we
Hmm.
still need to appreciate the moment.
Agreed. I would assert that we never arrive.
Right. Okay.
We never arrive. It's like climbing the mountain without a top. And yes, do stop and take stock of where you are. Appreciate the determination, discipline, effort, commitment, and tenacity, um, and the energy that was poured into it with a sense of self-trust of, I don't know where this is going to land. I don't know what the how or the when is, but I just know I have to get there. And that undeniable pull that you are describing, and it will continue to pull, hopefully, until um, we're in the ground.
Mm.
And that's the way to live life, is to be on your deathbed, um, when you're 90. I'm aiming for 90.
Oh, I'm
And no,
going more than that.
oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, damn straight.
CrossFitter. Yes, whatever that age looks like for anybody. and not having any regrets, not saying, oh, I wish I had done that, but what held me back was just some sort of semblance of fear, some sort of invisible cage. Because in the end, I'm happy to report you live, no matter what. You live. It's only the ego that has the biggest fear that somehow we always end up like, well, this will happen and then I'll feel and then no one will love me and I'll
Mm,
fall away a whole bunch of other losses and then I'll die. And it's like, oh, come now. Um, so we're talking about the mountain without a top, and I feel like the trajectory that one is on, once you're dialed in and you've made that commitment and you feel that pull, you level up constantly. However, the next level becomes your norm,
mm,
right? It's the new standard to which we uphold ourselves to. So it's hard to see just how far you've come because you only see yourself through your eyeballs all the time. And when you're holding yourself to a new high standard, so too does all your perfectionism that comes with it. Does all your your self-judgment and again with the eye on the prize, like, oh no, no, I got to be doing more. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. But wouldn't that be the best way to find out um, what there is on that deathbed, right? Because you can't go anymore. And really honor and revere all it took and to live fully unapologetically to that high standard in integrity.
mm,
Um, it's not until we run into people from our old world, our old life, who maybe haven't done the work or stayed in the familiar and have not moved on with you that you actually realize how far that gap is, right? Like I said, we're just always operating at our new norm. So it's easy to take ourselves for granted. So I
mm.
would assert you are your there is here. And your next instance of there will be here, and so on and so forth. And that's the beautiful part in all this.
Mm. How
Mhm.
much of that? Well, there's a few things going on in my head. That self doubt piece. How much of that arrives within us because of our early childhood conditioning? How much do we bring in with us
Mhm.
as part of our soul journey? I'm
Mhm.
I'm 51, so like experiencing Chiron return. So
Mhm.
there's
Oh,
a yeah, so there's a process of like unraveling there. Yeah. How much do you, or is it just like there are no coincidences, like it's all part of the package?
agreed. There are no coincidences. However, here we are on this plane in these human bodies. You've heard, if everyone remembers episode one, I said in our meat suits, uh, right? Carrying everything, including that self-doubt and decades worth of it. Even my clearest example of it, and this can be a takeaway for all the parents, is how we're conditioned at a very young age to question our reality. And the classic example is the upset parent or a relative who is crying. And we as a child will see what's going on. There's tears. There happens to be a lower energy going on, and they seem upset. And we approach and go, Mommy, are you okay? What's wrong? And the typical response of the parent is to put on a brave face and try and protect the child from the pain and go, oh, no, 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 it's fine. Mommy's okay, she's fine. And she quickly wipes away her tears and acts as if everything is normal.
Mm,
And we think that we're helping our children or protecting them in some way, but subconsciously we're fostering a sense of self-doubt because a child in through their eyes and brain development and seeing all the evidence in the room while being so empathic and sensitive and most highly in tune with that part of themselves is picking up on um, the fact that there is something not okay or someone's not all right. But now a person in authority, the person they love and trust the most, is denying their reality,
Mm,
going, "Oh, no, 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 I'm fine. It's okay." So now it's confusing to the child, like, well, mommy looks upset, mommy's crying, and I kind of overheard some conversation, but now I'm being told that actually she's okay. And how does that seed, once planted, continue to grow roots and foster into other behaviors in that, like, um, and like, do I even, if I'm feeling something, can I even trust it based on what I witnessed in childhood that I'm supposed to be okay, even though I'm upset? So I use that as the first happening of um, lack of self-trust.
mm,
Um, mhm. And when we're moving forward into territory unknown, the greatest thing we can do is to be associated and stay in our bodies and know who we are, regardless of the territory. No
mm,
man's land. Hmm. Um, I think it takes a lot of unconditioning of that, but then too, growing up, we do have lots of opportunity um, to come back to who we are and build that confidence and undo some of the self-doubt and self-questioning. It's just to what degree,
mm.
and
There's,
also with
sorry, I
mm,
was just going to say there's kind of two directions we could go in there. It's like, we're obviously at a time in the world, not just in our lives, but this moment in time in the world is poignant, I guess. Like there's a lot of change going on, and that all part of that sort of bringing awareness to our own healing and opening is one direction we could go in, but the other direction is how do we nurture our children so that they don't have the same experience that we had? Is that part of our own journey? And as they see us evolve, they will, come with us.
mhm.
Is there
By
something
proxy.
active we can do?
Hmm. Yeah, by proxy of epigenetics,
Mm,
we we would be helping our children. So it begins as the individual journey, and that resistance that we meet, which would be the self-doubt, and that brings us into what we wanted to talk about
yep.
today, which was resistance, flow, and the ego. uh, I didn't even know it.
You could.
Um,
I was
mm,
going to say you could write a poem about that. Yeah, resistance.
mhm. And if we think about how much that resistance has been pervasive in our lives and in the perpetuating patterns we keep coming up against, right? And somehow you can't get to the other side. You can't get there. But as I alluded to in the beginning, the cage was invisible to begin with. So it's really about the exploration and investigation into what makes up that cage. My best analogy, and this comes from my own personal experience, and it's one I've shared with many people in my life, including my Reiki clients, was a lesson I learned from the river. And I remember I was going through a very difficult time in my life, uh, and I would often head to the river for solace and to just gaze and see what wisdom it had for me. And I'd sit in a spot where there was one big rock, and I watched it from spring through summer to winter. And it's that type where as the river rises, it just skims over it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you can see it's there, and the surface area of how dry it is, from the winter, and as things thaw and melt and the water rises, gets smaller and smaller. Um, but yet it's always there. At some points with access to oxygen, and others just being completely encapsulated by the river. And I remember that rock being how I thought things should be. It has to go this way. This person should do this in order for this to work out, etc. And really, I was clinging onto a rock in a river, and the water was rising and rising and rising. It was my resistance to letting go because, of course, us with our small human minds think that we know best and we can, I'm so glad we can tell the future, all that kind of stuff, and read minds, to the point that we're so determined to hang on to the rock that now the water is coming up against our face and our throat, and it's rising, and we're having a harder time getting breaths, and we're chuttering, um and at some point even drowning,
Mm.
right? And it's the fear of not trusting what will happen when we let go and flowing with the river. A few things to take away was that, well, I couldn't hold on anymore. I had to let go at some point. But then I forgot I can swim. And that's a lesson for everybody, is that if you were to just let go of your resistance and trust where life is taking you,
Mm.
and where the river is taking you, you haven't given yourself enough credit to remember that you can swim. You've survived everything up to this point. You have resources and the wherewithal. And who's to say that the river doesn't take you to an embankment where you can get out and dry off and warm up and find nourishment, right? And recharge. Who's to say that the river doesn't take you to somewhere else that you're meant to be, that isn't drowning, clutching onto a rock in the middle of it? But it's the unknown, and it's we don't know what's up ahead. We can't predict where what the river looks like. That has us as the control enthusiasts that we are, clutching onto the rock um, for dear life. So
Mm.
there is a bit of a leap of faith that you have to take. And I tell you, it always works out. You'll be okay. There's something better up ahead.
Mm.
Hmm.
There's a book that I'm currently reading for a future guest. Actually, it's a book that hasn't yet been released, but he talks about and this is something that we hear about, I think, relatively often, is that idea of that our brain is wired for safety, and that back in Paleolithic times, or when we were less evolved, there was more risk, and we would remember those risks because we would actually be in danger, and that we actually still our brains still trigger and fire in that same way. But in fact, when we do take those risks and step out, we're retraining our brain that it is safe. But it's kind of it's not unusual to have that just because of the way that we're wired as humans.
Absolutely, that survival instinct. And that and now how that manifests in today's world, way past Paleolithic times, the behavioral adaptation is different, but the fear is primal and just the same. And I would assert that is the number one um, root of all concern in my practice, and how I work with my clients to find a sense of safety in their bodies, right? We have some perceived notion that we're in danger. And if you do go back to, Paleolithic times and tribe culture, right? Um, and that's root chakra stuff that we look at in Reiki, is safety, security, tribe, being grounded and belonging being the big one. Because if you weren't a part of the village, and if you were um, ostracized, you were literally outside the village walls and alone, and that's more likely for the predators to come and get you versus safety in numbers. Hence why um, we've come into these behavioral adaptations with fear of loss of love, fear of not belonging, um, fear of failure, fear of letting others down, etc., to ensure that we do stay in the tribe and that we do stay safe, right? If we look at another form of not feeling safe in one's body, uh, digestive GI issues.
Right.
So I also get clients on the table who suffer from IBS, and but they can't figure it out. They've gone to see the dietitian, they've gone to the specialist, and they're taking all the supplements and changed up their diet, and yet it is pervasive in their it has affected their quality of life. And I go, that's great, you're doing all those things. But if your mind is wired with a message that you are not safe in some way, shape, or form, you're going to continue to have your GI system clearing out and evacuating all the time and not properly digesting food, because your body is reserving energy to run
Yeah.
and to get to the vital organs. So it can't even accept all of these great nutrients and supplements and what you're trying to ingest to help your system in the first place. Hmm.
When you're working with a client and they're having that kind of experience, how would you say that Reiki helps to support them? Like obviously you're bringing your skills together because you almost can't have one. Well, I'm sure that the Reiki healing on its own is supportive, but when you're coaching as well, that's going to bring a whole nother level because you're understanding from a different
Viewpoint, yeah,
perspective.
right. That's several, right?
What sort
And
of,
Reiki.
sorry, go. No,
Okay.
you go.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the way I utilize Reiki in my practice is the integration part, right?
Okay.
To come back into your body and cultivate that sense of safety, absolutely. But first, we have to unpack it, right? And we've beautiful brains that are overthinking all the time and trying to predict the future and full of intrusive thoughts, and the things we want and know at some deeper level yet can't quite crack through to get there. So it's like unpacking all that and understanding, okay, this is how the brain is functioning and this is how the body is in response to it. And I ask my clients a question that a wonderful one I get from Peter Crone. And that's for them to first look around the room, look at their surroundings, get a sense of where they're sitting on the seat, me in front of them, etc. And I have them take a breath and I ask them, it is it an undeniable and unquestionable fact that you are not safe right now? And they'll take a pause and they'll go, no.
Mm,
And that's the double negative, right? You're not safe. And the brain needs that validation and that evidence first to know, oh, right, that's right, I am safe. I'm in a room, you know,
mm,
having an appointment and nothing's coming to get me. Nothing bad's going to happen. I think that's one of the bigger ones too, is like, oh, if all this good stuff is happening, then something bad has to happen. Some shoe has to drop. But that's a topic for another podcast. And then from there, what does safety look like? Because we know all too well what a lack of safety feels like in the body, in the constrictions, right? Tight throat, tight chest, hypervigilance, and um, the anxiety of it,
mm,
right? Your shoulders being up in your ears all the time. Versus then cultivating what does safety look like and feel like in your body, and they really tap into that, and I instantly see their shoulders drop, I see their jaws soften, and they're closing their eyes for a moment. It's just a part of themselves. It's that neural pathway that isn't as deeply grooved as the I'm not safe neural
mm,
pathway. hmm and with every Reiki session, we're getting back into the body instead of being all out here and grasping and but then this and this and distracted and overstimulated and overwhelmed, and coming back to this and the subtleties found within that were actually there the whole time, the little sensations, getting in touch with the heart, with softening the belly, with seating down and grounding down into sacral and root chakra and into your feet, and remembering what that feels like and seeing what's there, meeting it for the first time and having space for it. I think we're always so busy, and
mm,
uh, it's all too easy to pick up your phone and start doom scrolling and or getting distracted by something else. That it's like you really find out what you're made of when you have to be with yourself.
mm.
And can you like yourself when you're by yourself?
Yeah,
Can you accept yourself when you're by yourself?
yeah.
Mhm. Can you have compassion for yourself when you're by yourself?
Mm. It's quite challenging, I find, to go from that kind of rationalizing and all of the mental stuff and getting into the body.
Mhm.
And so your practice, you're assisting that process, right?
Agreed. Like we have to give the brain something to clutch onto because it's going to want to do that. And depending on where someone is in their process and um, what the crisis and the chaos is, it's hard for them to settle
Mm,
uh, because they're always so used to being hypervigilant. Who could blame them? So I do something called the 5 minute game. And any one of my Reiki clients listening to this right now, they're going to be laughing. But we explore that. So if a client comes to me and says, you know what, I'm not able to sleep, I'm anxious all the time, and I'm just so resentful because I do stuff for everybody else. No one ever says thank you. Um, the myriad of reasons, and then what's happening in their relationship, and what's happening in their family life, what's happening in their career life, all the evidence to support their anxiety, resentment, anger, um, sleeplessness, intrusive thoughts, what have you. Okay. And I go, okay, where's that in your body? And then we breathe into that and they show me where and how heavy it is, etc. And I go, okay, for a moment, then, in the absence of feeling resentful, angry, taken for granted, and anxious, in the absence of that, what would make itself available to you? And it's the first time that their brain has been able to sort of put that to the side and have permission to go, oh, when I don't have to do this anymore, what becomes available to me? And they'll list, you know, I feel lighter, I feel peace, I feel hope, I feel capable. Okay. Like, all right, great. So when we get on that Reiki table, I'm going to start a timer. And for 5 minutes, you're going to entertain feeling, um, peace. What were the other four or three I noted? Capable, hope, right? Lighter, but just for 5 minutes. And they go, oh, five? Okay. Uh, and and really feel it in your body as if you have it. Because really, when the brain is sending messages down and the narratives down, the body doesn't know if it's a reality, like if it's actually happening, or it's whatever the brain sends down, whether it's happening or not, the body will believe. And via epigenetics, which we've talked about in the past, it's um, the it's prompting certain genes to respond to that belief. Okay. So we're going to try a different brain message to prompt different genes in your body that reflect lighter, um, relaxed, hopeful, and capable. I said, but then you only get 5 minutes, and I'll time you, and I'll tell you when that 5 minutes is up. And then you can go back to feeling resentful, anxious, angry, like no one, everyone takes you for granted and no one appreciates you. And they laugh because it really, we get a semblance of just how preposterous it is and how attached we are to our limitations. How attached we are to our narratives and the confirmation bias of everything in our lives that supports that narrative. And everybody goes past the 5 minutes. But then, of course, I attract all A types into my room, and I go, okay, 5 minutes, go. And they sit there and go, okay, how do I do this in the most productive way possible? Joy, joy, joy. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm relaxed. I'm free. Oh, I can do this, right? And and we kid. But really, it's about entertaining that for 5 minutes. And then you do it for another 5 minutes. And then maybe you do it for an hour. But really, it's all about a state of being and what's possible. And the beautiful thing is that nothing bad happened. I had one client on the table and she's like, I'm so afraid to relax into this and feel good because I feel like something bad's going to happen. And the deepest, darkest of her fears was that if I relax and enjoy this Reiki session, someone's going to get cancer and die.
Wow.
That's, yeah, that's literally where her mind went because cancer is pervasive in the genetics of the family, and this relative had it and this one, and now this one's not feeling well. And she had taken so much emotional burden upon herself um, as a little child, right? And that she's somehow responsible for everyone's well-being and genetic makeup, right? That if she were to have a moment for herself, she would drop the ball of her hypervigilance somehow, and that's where her mind would go. Is eventually everyone's going to get cancer and die because of me. It's mm-hmm,
That's hectic.
mm-hmm, hectic and heavy.
Yeah. So when you're working with someone in well, whatever situation, how long Okay, so our that process, right, where we have all of the mental stuff going on and we're not in the body, that I'm sure when they come to you and they do the 5 minute play a game and they have their Reiki session, they leave feeling all of the things: peace, lighter, more positive, hopeful. But over a period of time, the don't be so stupid that all of the things, the familiar
Yeah.
thing
Yes.
comes back in to play.
A pathway.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How it's probably different for everyone, but how long would you say it takes for someone to really work through that stuff?
And that's such a great question because that's the first worry that comes in their head is that, well, I'm going to have to go back into real life as soon as I leave the doors of this room, and I'll turn my phone on, and there's going to be X amount of emails or messages or urgent things waiting for me. I don't want to lose this, and this outside world is going to degrade my inner peace. And I mean, it depends how deeply grooved that neural pathway is um, of well, fear-based narratives. We'll call it that.
Yeah.
And so it takes practice and it takes awareness and a real sense of self-compassion to meet those familiar narratives and familiar feelings, lower vibrational feelings when they come up, to remind them that 5 minutes does exist. For, however long they were on the table with me, they had it. And I tell them, I said, I know that you're afraid of losing this once you leave, but you can't. It's that saying I say, because this is their truth. If they're relaxed, you know, peaceful, there's breathing room, there's a new sense of themselves, which was always there, just that they just didn't go down that neural pathway. Um, that's their truth too. All parts belong to us. And it's not about rejecting any, it's about integrating all, which would be the ultimate form of self acceptance. And the thing I say to them is nothing can be taken from you when you cannot be taken from yourself. You belong to yourself. And in that vein, then, everything outside of you is just a circumstance because wherever you go, there you are. You belong to you. So the power that comes from that is they get to decide what that looks like for themselves, what their isness is. And where I get everyone to by end of session is it just is, right? People are not in elation, but they're not in the deep anguish they were before. It's this really beautiful neutrality of peace, breathing room, belonging, calm, safety, but it is, right? It just is. And that's we talked about equanimity before previously. It's neither good nor bad, it just is. And when you're in is, you are in full acceptance. And from that space, you choose rather than react. And when we're looking at doing this work, and it just happens to be through the modality of Reiki, but it takes reps because we're undoing decades worth, if not lifetimes worth, and generational stuff that's been handed down, um, that's been carried by the individual for as long as they can remember. So it is possible, but it takes awareness and discipline. Um, Hmm.
Yeah.
But not in a hard, I have to bleed for it way.
Excuse me. I think it kind of it's that idea of being able to become the observer. So
Hmm.
you can observe, you can sort of step away from all of the everyday troubles or experiences that we may be having, and look at it and realize that we actually do have a choice.
Hmm.
And taking that time, and often people say, when you're feeling stressed, this is really simplifying things, but when you're feeling stressed, just breathe.
Hmm.
Richard Rudd in the Gene Keys talks about pausing regularly because we get caught up in all of those everyday cycles. But when we take that moment to pause and we're deliberate, we can step away, we can breathe, we can say, this is the story.
Yeah.
This isn't necessary. This doesn't have to be the story. And when we can quiet that and take a moment to observe, then we can start to move away from it, or as you said, it's becomes is it just is, rather than something that defines us. And we often see that when we can come back to that inner calm, that the outer world begins to be less abrasive.
Hmm. It's just noise,
Mm.
or as I call it, mortal shit.
Mortal shit.
Mortal shit,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
And I agree with you. And Tara Brach refers to the power of the pause,
Mm,
right? For a moment, because the ego will knee-jerk response. Um, versus, yes, the power of the pause, being the observer, and making a choice. We put ego to the side for a moment. And it's not that ego's bad. Ego
mm,
has its main function, which is survival, right? Keep us alive at any cost. So I talk about like not rejecting those parts of us per se, but integrating
mm,
ego. The more we resist ego and try and dismiss it and frown upon it and shame it, it will give us the opposite effect. It wants to
I've
be held.
I haven't. I have gone through processes, and I think, as you mentioned, it takes it takes commitment, a lot of commitment, but also just remembering, because it becomes so automatic that that all of the self talk and so on. But one thing that I found really helpful for me was when I noticed the ego stuff, the negative self talk, the inner critic, thanking it,
Mhm.
telling it that I, telling it me that I love you, and in fact it's almost like if I could visualize it, the inner critic's there, and I go, thank you, I love you, and it goes, oh, and it just shuts up.
Yeah.
It just pauses. It
Hmm.
stops.
Hmm.
But yeah, have to remember to do it.
But that's the whole kicker, right? To win the lottery, you got to buy a ticket first. But yeah, so that's all it ever wanted. So if we
Mm,
can, you made such a good point. If the ego's main purpose, its one goal in mind is survival, right? And it comes from a fear of basically not belonging,
mm,
being out of the tribe, outside the walls. I'm not safe, right? Because and I'll drive this home in a moment, but if we don't belong, so therefore if we're not accepted by someone, we're rejected out of a group, we're not part of it, that must mean underneath that a rudimentary belief that, well, then I'm bad
mm,
because good, I would belong. And if we go one layer beneath I'm bad, it means I'm not lovable.
Mm,
Hmm. Right? Because if something's bad, then it won't deserve love. So if we were to frown upon that ego when it comes up and its knee-jerk reactions, and serve it more criticism, like our self-criticism. Oh, I should have.
mm,
Oh, why did I do that? I should have known better. Or it goes to shame, blame, guilt, something outside of us, right? It's their fault or they're wrong and I'm right, etc. We miss out on the point and the key nourishment, which is just to love,
mm,
right? Because that's all it wanted to begin with. It's just to belong. Because if I belong, I'm loved. I'm good. And if I'm good, I'm loved, right? At a very um, sort of infantile belief system.
mm. I can't remember where I read it. It was a couple of years ago. It was, it might have been Peter Levine. The body keeps, or I was looking into trauma, and how the body keeps the score, and that sort of thing. And one of the people that I read about was talking about love and how when we come into the world we don't feel separate, and so we begin with I am love, I am love, and then when we we sort of get to one or two, and our parents tell us off for doing something, and then you run to them and they hug you and say you shouldn't have done that. You feel that you're loved conditionally, so there becomes
Mhm.
conditional love. If you do this, then I'll love you. If you do as you're told, I'll love you. So that, and there was a whole series of them, but it was really interesting, like how that idea of us being sort of unified as one whole, and I am love, as we are all, that how our sort of infancy and through our cycles of life we become more separate, and then it becomes the journey back to understanding that and recognizing that.
Agreed.
Some
It's
journey with the
some journey.
topless mountain.
I just got a visual of that. Um, I just heard topless. Uh, exactly. Where was the break in a instinctual knowing before any impression was made on us that somehow we were separate? And really, it's just words, right? It's just words that form the invisible cage.
Love, and I'm excited about, is when we first did our first interview 3 years ago. I don't know if you had like an online offering, and you do now.
I didn't even have an office.
You didn't even have an office. Do you have one now?
Oh, yes, I do.
Oh, very
Yeah.
good.
I have my own practice now,
Yes,
uh,
yeah.
Sage Epoch, and my offerings have expanded. So, in addition to doing in-person Reiki at my place, um, and I also can offer online readings for the Akashic records as well as distance Reiki.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, I've entered the personal coaching space. So right now I'm running my group course, the Fierce Femme course, and we just dove into module 1,
Cool.
which is shadow work. Uh, Shadow work and self-acceptance. And then we'll go into divine feminine. We'll go into conscious boundary setting, and then a module on self-forgiveness and self-acceptance. That will be a big one. And then the last module with being how do we embody all this and truly stand in our power, stand in our self-trust, stand in our self-knowing and our instinct. So that's also available as well as individual coaching.
So your course, the Fierce Femme, is it something that people can drop into any time, or this is the first time going through it? How does that work with, you know, live calls and all of that? Do you have? Oh, you can tell me. I don't need to
Yeah,
ask any more questions.
I love that you're interested. You should join, actually. I think it'd be amazing. It is 8 week immersive,
Hmm.
and the first the co this well the spring summer cohort is happening now.
Yep.
Only one module in, so if anyone wants to join, they can catch up.
Okay.
Absolutely. Um, and it's a weekly call on Mondays where we're reviewing the module material, as well as Q&A for me and reflection for each member of what they're taking away from it and how they're seeing the patterns in their lives. And back to your point about oneness, actually, you'll find that even though the circumstances are different or the scenario is different, the shadow is the same. The
Mm.
wound is the same, and it actually invites in a lot of support and empathy and understanding amongst all. When you realize actually we all know what pain is, we all know what fear is, we all know what love is. It doesn't make us so different.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a core value.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sounds amazing. Um, and I guess that kind of cycle of the 8 weeks, like when you do sort of close, we want to come back to the meat suit, right? We got
Yeah.
to come back to the meat suit world.
Mhm.
So it's like how we embody that and integrate it into our lives.
Mhm.
Yeah, because our ultimate goal is to have a better understanding of ourselves so that we can live in a more fulfilled
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, way of being
Yeah.
and actually a relational aspect to this world. So it's like I said before, wherever you go, there you are.
Mm.
And and everything outside of you, it is just a mirror and a circumstance,
Yeah.
right? We create our realities based on what we're radiating out.
That's a whole
And
nother podcast as well.
yeah, we're gonna 3 hours for that one.
Yeah.
But
Great.
the beginning of it is the self-accountability and cultivating a sense of self-trust.
Mm.
Jump and life will catch you. You'll figure it out. You'll be okay. You'll live. Don't worry. And there's only one way to find out.
Yeah. It's not by sitting at home on doom scrolling. Thank you so much, Patty. It's so good to have you here. I love our conversations, and yeah, it's always a joy. So much wisdom from the spiritual badass.
Oh, the badass, badass.
Badass.
Well, it takes one to know one, my dear. And
Love it.
I, yeah, it's always so good, so nourishing. Thank you again, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Mwah.